I have 3 notes in my phone. Same phrase. Different dates. The first is from 6 weeks ago. The second, about 2 weeks after that. The third, last Thursday. I keep a folder on my phone with no name. That screenshot went in there alongside 11 other things I haven't decided what to do with yet. Nothing in the folder is labeled. A forwarded calendar from 8 months back, no follow-up ever came. A voice note timestamp with nothing attached. A photo of a printed page I took at a slight angle because I didn't want to be seen doing it. I go through the folder every few weeks and delete what I can now explain. Most of it. The phrase screenshot was the first entry in close to 4 months that felt like it might attach to something already sitting in there. I didn't know what. I left it. I didn't write it down because I thought something was wrong. I wrote it down because I heard it once and it landed slightly off, and I keep notes on things like that. Not suspicion. More like a habit. I started doing it after a situation a few years back where I needed a record and didn't have one. The phrase isn't alarming the first time. It's built not to be. It closes a conversation without technically ending it. Smooth, nothing in it you can grip and push back on. You could hear it 10 times straight and not register it. I registered it the second. Where a figure came from, circle back on a meeting. She'll ask where a figure came from, circle back on a point 3 agenda items later if it didn't hold. Disagree in the middle of a sentence without softening the entry. That's just how she's always operated, and about 5 weeks ago she stopped. She started answering in finished sentences. Complete, rounded. The same phrasing the second time as the first on any given subject. I tested it without meaning to. Brought up a project detail we'd discussed before, but used different wording. She gave me the same response she'd given the first time. Same words, same order? There was a meeting 2 weeks into this where a vendor number was clearly wrong. The kind of thing she would have stopped cold in any previous version of that room. She let it pass. I noticed it, didn't say anything, and filed it in the part of my head where I keep things that aren't ready to be named yet. After that meeting, I pulled up the shared notes document. The vendor number was still there. No strike-through, no comment, no flag. Just the wrong figure in the body of the text, sitting like it had been reviewed and signed off. I checked the edit history. No changes after the meeting. Nina's name wasn't in the revision log at all. She'd been in the room for 40 minutes and hadn't opened the file once. Nina follows up on her own objections in writing. Not sometimes. Consistently for as long as I've worked near her. Flag something verbally, and inside 24 hours there's a message, a question, a suggested fix, at minimum confirmation that she hasn't dropped it. I've seen her do it on a Friday at 9 p.m. about a footnote. I went back through our thread. Nothing in the 24 hours after the meeting. Nothing in the 48. I checked again on day 5. Still nothing. I logged the absence. Not the vendor number, the follow-up that didn't come. Dropped it in the unnamed folder, no label. One other thing from that meeting. When the wrong number was read aloud, Nina glanced at me. Half a second. The kind of look that could be anything. Checking the room. Reflex. I didn't move. She turned back and the meeting kept going. I've sat with that half second longer than makes sense. I don't know what she was checking for. I just know she looked at me and not at anyone else in the room when that number came out. Then a calendar invite came through her account. A time, a street address, no subject, no description. I checked the version history. The attendee list had been edited after the initial send. It started with 4 names. By the time it reached me, there was only one. Mine. I accepted. Didn't go. Didn't mark it declined. Left it on the calendar. The phrase came up again about a week later. Not Nina. A guy I'll call Derek. Different department, we don't overlap much. We were outside after an all-hands, and I mentioned a scheduling conflict, something small, and he used it. Same clause. Same beat before the last part of the sentence. When I didn't respond right away, he held eye contact for half a second longer than the sentence needed. Like he was checking for something. I nodded and let the conversation end. That evening, I pulled up the message Nina had sent me 2 weeks earlier. The phrase was there. Not the same idea in different words. The same sentence word for word. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't matching things that weren't there. I wasn't. 2 people. No shared project. No obvious reason to be running off the same text. 1 phrase. That's not coincidence. I went back through things I'd let pass. A few months back, a mutual contact had brought up a group, kept it casual, a community, a certain kind of person, a small voluntary contribution to keep things running. Nothing urgent in how he said it. I half listened and said I'd think about it. A payment record reached me by accident, appended to the bottom of a forwarded thread someone hadn't trimmed. Fixed amount, 3 consecutive months. No service listed, no description of what it covered. The charge date matched the day of the week blocked in the calendar invite. It wasn't a forwarded file, it was the original chain. Someone had hit forward without scrolling down, and the payment footer was still sitting below their signature block, separated by a thin horizontal rule in a smaller font. Easy to skim past. I didn't. 6 hours after that thread arrived, the same person sent a follow-up. Short, casual, asking whether an attachment had come through on my end and whether to resend. There had been no attachment mentioned in the original thread. There was no attachment. There was only the footer. And there was no reason to ask about it unless they'd thought through what was sitting at the bottom of what they'd forwarded. I wrote back that nothing had come through. 1 sentence, no lag. Then I dropped the follow-up message into the unnamed folder. 9 items by then. The footer went in as a separate entry, so there were effectively 10 because those 2 pieces of information didn't belong together in the same slot. A voluntary contribution that recurs on a fixed date with no attached explanation is a subscription. Someone set the interval. Someone is collecting it. There was a form. I caught it on a shared screen during a call. Input fields framed as reflection prompts. Where have you failed? What embarrasses you? Who do you reach out to when things get hard? What do you want that you haven't said out loud to anyone? One field had a grayed out example answer. Specific enough to have come from a real person. Whoever wrote it had answered straight. That answer is in a database somewhere. The screen shifted. I had maybe 8 seconds of it. It moved because of a scroll, not a click. The form went up and off frame while the person on the call pulled up their next item. The bottom edge held in the lower quarter of the screen for another 2 or 3 seconds before it cleared. The person didn't pause, didn't glance at the camera, same pace all the way through. I don't know if they saw it was still visible. After the call, I typed out every field I could remember in order. Got 7, not random. Each one narrowed on the last, the questions getting more specific as they went. The first few asked about work and general failures. By the 4th or 5th, they were asking about specific people in your life, by category. The last one I saw before the scroll had the label cut off at the screen edge. I couldn't read the header. The input box below it was already filled in, not a placeholder. The formatting was different from the grade example earlier. Different weight, different color. A name, entered by someone who had already gotten that far. I wrote it down. Name in the last field. Not a placeholder. Font too small to read. That note went into the folder, and there was a printed page. One sheet, no header, no logo. A short paragraph. What happens here stays here, out of respect for everyone involved. Out of respect. The boundary belongs to the group collectively. Everyone holds it. Everyone is protected by it. That framing makes the act of speaking outside a harm directed at the people beside you, not a refusal aimed at the people who wrote the rule. The word respect is doing specific work in that sentence. It's not an appeal to privacy. It's an appeal to loyalty to the people in the room, which means breaking it isn't a policy violation, it's a personal one. That's a different kind of pressure. I ran one test, small, 2 sentences on my end. The person handling contact, I'll call him the recruiter, reached out again. Same pace as always, nothing on the surface. I told him I'd mentioned the group to someone close to me, that I wanted one day before I decided anything. He didn't address it. He moved to a closing window, limited spots. Everyone already inside had been exactly where I was. No new information, same points, different sequence. 11 minutes after that, a second message. Just checking in, same claim, half the words. 11 minutes is a specific interval, long enough to look unforced, short enough to keep pressure on a silence, then quiet. Not cold, more like a door held at a specific angle. The suggestion in the silence was that the pause meant something, that waiting was itself an answer. I didn't write back. I opened a blank note and recorded what had just happened. Not the words, the order. What it reduced to? You made a loyalty error. You're not ready. The window is closing. No evidence, no reasoning. 3 moves in sequence, nothing else. I've seen that pattern in other contexts. It works because it doesn't give you anything to argue against. There's no claim to dispute. There's only the shape of the pressure, and the shape says, you're already behind. I put the phone down, left it for an hour. I didn't go to Nina. I didn't put anything in writing to anyone. The group had a recurring room booking in a building where I have scheduling access through work. That access predates any of this by over a year. I've used it for other things throughout. The booking was in the system under a generic event title. Nothing that identified who it was for. If you didn't already know, you wouldn't know. I canceled the reservation. logged it as an internal conflict. On their end, it would read as an empty slot. A system gap, no attribution, nothing pointing to a person. I closed the screen. The cancellation confirmation went to a recipient list I hadn't configured. There was one address in it I didn't recognize. Standard automated layout. Booking reference, date, time, location, recipient field. The recruiter's address was in there. He'd made the original booking. Below it was a second. Different first name, same domain format. First name, @, same character string after it. I didn't know the name. It hadn't appeared anywhere. I ran a search across every thread I had. Work, personal, everything I'd used in any connection with any of this. 0 results. The address had no history in anything I could access. Whoever it was had been attached to the booking without showing up in any prior communication at any point. The booking had been made 3 months ago. Whoever this was had been receiving confirmation emails for 3 months on a reservation I'd just canceled. I didn't write to it. Added it to a plain text note. Dropped it in the unnamed folder. 13 items now. 3 days later, Nina sent a message. Stepping back from some things. Needed some time. It came in at the exact minute the canceled meeting had been scheduled to start. Nothing named. I read it and set the phone face up on the desk. Waited to see if anything else came through. Nothing did. The recruiter stopped appearing in the thread. No last message, no sign-off. His final reply sat at the bottom of the thread with nothing after it. I checked twice over 2 days. Same last line. Nothing below it. I opened the Notes app. 3 entries, same phrase, same dates, same order. I left them there.